Hello everybody, we're on chapter 9 and it's called The Wind Lends a Hand. Do you remember that Letty and Noah Letty for the first time ever has left the inn, this one here, her inn on stilts, and she's off to catch the snow merchant. Another 90 paces from the White Horse Inn and they were utterly lost. The snow merchant's frost prince led them in circles, crisscrossing and backtracking all over the place. He's trying to lose us, said Noah. He knows we're following him. Either that or he's as lost as we are, said Letty. We haven't caught him up at all. We need a shortcut. But Letty didn't know any. Barter looked very different through a telescope. Down here all the street signs were smeared with grime. The cobbles were slippery with blubber and beer. Gas lamps flickered and died. Underneath them drunken sailors swore and sang. I'm not asking them for directions, she said. They don't know they're up from their down. What about the wind? Said Noah. She rolled her eyes. You don't expect the wind to show me a shortcut. It's your friend, said Noah. It might give you a tug in the right direction. Even if I ask, I don't think the wind will listen. It has to, he insisted. That's what joint best friends do. Noah was right again. If the wind ignored her now, then it wasn't her friend at all. So closing her eyes and whispering to the air around her, Letty made a little prayer. I don't know if you can hear me, wind. I don't think you've even got ears. But I know you've not let me go into Barter before, but this is different. I'm lost. I don't know Barter, but you do. You whistle down every street to this town. You can show me a shortcut to the harbour. Please, you've got to. She took off her glove, held out her hand. Almost at once the miracle came. Letty felt the pull of the wind. It was like an invisible hand had taken hold of hers to lead her someplace. She laughed with the joy of it. She laughed with the wonder. She began to run at such a speed that Noah could barely keep up. Where are you going? He called, and Letty cried back, I can feel it. You were right, Noah. Follow me. I know the way. The wind really was talking to her. It had no words. It was speaking in a language of tugs and nudges. Letty concentrated, feeling the pull, trying to follow where it led, down side alleys and dark streets, so they could reach the harbour before the snow merchant escaped. The chase was on, and Letty had discovered a gift, a power. She could hold the hand of the wind, and it would show her the way. They rushed back down streets reeking of mould and beer, hopping from one shadow to the next, with Letty never knowing whether they would go left, right or straight on. Noah followed Letty, and Letty followed the wind. They scarpered down Drum Lane, past windows mostly black or curtained, steering clear of the street lamps. Then Letty lost the wind's hand, and they had to crisscross and backtrack before she found it again. They ran over Rinny Bridge, across Swill Street and Pickle Lane. They tiptoed through alleys of nets and rotting rope as the salt smell of the sea grew stronger and stronger. They stopped by a tangled necklace of rigging strung with bungs of cork. Keep running, wheezed Noah. We've got to catch him. Well, I've got to catch my breath first, said Letty. She leaned against a windowsill gone soft with rot while her heart raced. Ahead she heard the tall shipmast rattling in the harbour. She mouthed a thank you to the wind for saving her life. She still didn't know how the miracle had happened. She was outside, having an adventure, led by an invisible hand. The harbour's just ahead, Letty said. There's not a frost print in sight, said Noah. We've beaten him to it. Let's get to my boat. The harbour held merchant clippers, big ships with 3 or 4 masts and huge rudders, and even some whaling boats with funnels and coal engines. Noah's little wooden ship was squeezed among them. With its single mast and tiny cabin, Letty wondered how he had managed to sail the world in it. Her mouth must have been hanging open, and Noah must have mistaken her shock for admiration, because he said proudly, She's beautiful, isn't she? She's called Luther's Wood. Luther was my grandmother's name, and the ship is made from her stalk. She grew all that wood from her shoulder? Letty asked. Eventually, said Noah, when my people die, we bury them up to their neck so the stalk can carry on growing. Oh, like a tree. Exactly like a tree, said Noah, and every one of our forests is the graveyard of a different tribe. It sounds a very different place to Albion. Letty closed her eyes and tried to imagine. Strange. Readying herself to run again, Letty sprinted for the harbour and then stopped. The wind was tugging her back to look at a slanted building leaning heavily against its next-door neighbour, too battered and bruised to stand up on its own. It faced the sea full on, and Letty could tell that for years it had taken the brunt of the coastal winds, and sailors too drunk or seasick to walk any further into town. Salt had stripped the paint from the door and the sign that used to hang above it, but Letty knew the name anyway. Why is the wind bringing me here, she said. This is the calm before the storm. Dar comes here every night and gambles. He lost 9 shillings and sixpence last week, but he didn't have 9 shillings and sixpence, so Mr. Sleech, the debt collector, came and took away all the pictures on the walls. Letty heard singing coming from inside. She peered through the dirty glass. Inside was a tumbled mess of beer, foam and giddy sailors. So this is where her Dar spent most of his time. She searched the faces but couldn't see Dar. A group of fishermen fought, a group of whalers drank, and a group of smugglers sang and played a 7-string. It was a famous song that Letty knew. It told of the love affair between a sailor and an albatross in over 100 verses. The smugglers were on verse 77. This is a very long song, isn't it? She flew down on the riddled deck. The moon was full and strange. She put her wings around his neck, her feathers rearranged. And oh, her shape began to change. Her shape began to change. The moon was in her skin and hair. The stars were in her eyes. She said, "You love me everywhere across the 7 seas and skies. And oh, you saw through my disguise. You saw through my disguise." "I know those whalers," said Noah. "I sell them my roses sometimes to give to their sweethearts. That's Captain McNulty." He pointed to a red-bearded whaler with bloody gums, picking a fishbone from his teeth with the end of his harpoon. "Would he help us?" said Letty. "Is that why the wind has led us here?" "He doesn't know how to do much apart from hunt, kill and spit." Letty pulled a face as Captain McNulty spat the fishbone down the throat of a smuggler holding a high note. He laughed as the poor man choked. "Oh, he's horrible." "The other whalers aren't much better," said Noah, pointing out each one and naming them. Blubber Johnson was giving one of Noah's polka-dot roses to a girl on his knee, and Grot-nosed Charlie was on his 7th pint of ale. The Creechy twins were having a fist fight with the barman. Stoker Pete was arm wrestling 3 men at once. "I don't think there's anyone in there who can help," said Letty to Noah, although in truth she wasn't looking at the whalers, she was looking for Dar. Suddenly the door of the calm before the storm opened and out flew a man who landed like a sack on the street. Whoever had thrown him out stood silhouetted in the doorway. "We gamble with shillings here, Henry, not pebbles," growled the silhouette. "If you don't clear your debts by sunrise, I'll be round to your inn for payment in kind. I've had my eye on your last rug for a while now." "Yes, Mr. Sleech," said the figure on the street. The silhouette shut the door. "Oh, I think I know what's happened." Letty sent the shillings to her Dar, remember, with the pigeon, and the shillings had been made by the snow merchant, hadn't they? And he had changed pebbles into shillings, and now I think the shillings have turned back into pebbles, so now her Dar's been thrown out for gambling with pebbles. The silhouette shut the door. The man on the street looked at Letty. It was her Dar, Henry. He was drunk and red-eyed, and his bow tie had been ripped from him. He reeked of ale and tears. It took him a while to recognise her. "What are you doing here?" he slurred. That's the end of the chapter.